Welcome everyone back to weekly weather updates, and in today's video we're going to have the latest from the live radar. And for the latest weather warnings, we have got a rain warning issued for parts of western Scotland, as we are going to see some pretty heavy rain later on this week. Now, we only have one warning issued at the moment, but I suspect we will see multiple other warnings issued. As we'll see from the latest UKV, we could be looking at our first named storm of the season coming through later on this working week into the weekend. Now, we have been talking about the chances of some stormy weather later on this week for a good few days now, going back to kind of the middle of last week. But we've been seeing lots of chopping and changing from the long-range charts, both in terms of intensity and track, with some runs taking this low-pressure system towards Greenland, other runs towards the UK. And that scenario that brings it towards the UK looks like it has won out. And we are going to see not only this low-pressure system tracking very close by to Scotland, but it does look exceptionally intense indeed. Now, the UKV is pretty ridiculous today, I must stress. I'm about 90% sure we're not going to see the sort of wind gusts that the UKV is showing. But even if we saw, one or two levels below that, we'd still be looking at a named storm and some perhaps yellow and amber warnings. So yeah, we are looking at potentially 48, maybe 72 hours of some really horrific conditions later on this week. And we'll look at that in detail in the first half of the video. In the second half of the video, we'll continue to update you on those longer term prospects, as we are going to see the Atlantic unlocking for a short period of time. It's not going to dominate the next couple of weeks. We are going to see some high pressure returning at times, and it means the forecast going forward is very, very difficult. And as we're seeing later on this week, it does allow for some very sudden changes in the weather patterns, and that could be in store as we head into early October. So do remember, if you enjoy my videos, make sure you like and subscribe. Now, to start on the live radar, not too much going on at the moment. Still got higher pressure around. Things are reasonably dry, a little bit chilly out there, pretty moist as well. A lot of dew around this morning. We are heading to that time of year where it's getting cold and damp, and you can see that there's a few bits and bobs of rain around, as I'm calling this around 8 p.m, but nothing too much. Temperatures pretty chilly. Nothing, too cold today, around the mid to high teens. Could even get towards 20 degrees the next day or two, but we are looking at that kind of middle of the afternoon or early afternoon. As soon as that sun sets, the temperatures do drop away, and again, we're likely to see temperatures down towards the mid-single digits over the coming days. But later on this week, that's where we got our eyes on. Now, at the moment, we've got a rain warning issued for Western Scotland. Now, this isn't actually for the big storm system we're thinking that's coming through Friday through to Saturday. This is for the rain before that. So we are going to see some really horrific rain through Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and then we could see a big storm system after. This is as we see this southeast-northwest split that we've been alluding to over the past few videos setting up. And it is going to allow for a lot of rain to fall in a very small area. And that's why I got this warning issued for over 48 hours here through Wednesday into Friday for persistent heavy rain leading to travel disruption and flooding. Again, we're looking at large rainfall, 50 to 75 millimetres widely, 100 to 150 millimetres over Western Hills, and 200 to 250 mils over some of the mountains. That is a ridiculous amount of rain. That is huge. 10 inches of rainfall. That is a huge amount. Those are sort of levels you'd see from sort of a hurricane. Yes, this is falling over 3 days, not over 12 or 24 hours like we'd see in a hurricane, but it's those similar sort of moisture levels and rainfall falling out of the sky. So there's a lot of rain falling, and again, we'll have to see what happens. You can see just at the end of the warning, there is the potential for another spell of wet and windy weather soon to follow on Fridays. The Met Office is not too bullish on it yet, but if the models continue as they have been today, then they're probably going to get pretty bullish very quickly. At the moment, medium impact, low likelihood, and again, depending on the development of these bands of rain, I could see perhaps a short-term amber warning put into force. Now, if you look at the latest UKV, we can say over the next couple of days, nothing too horrible, but that rainfall starts to set up across those western areas during Tuesday evening. And it starts to become persistent, and you can see there are some ebbs and flows of intensity, but generally speaking, nothing really changes, and it just stays raining for those western areas. And then as we head into Thursday, this is where we start to see it really picking up. Lots of heavy rain, and that rainfall could clear southwards and eastwards into Friday. And then it's as we head through Friday into Saturday, this system here, again, it doesn't look too vicious from a precipitation perspective, but my gosh, the winds, as we'll see for a minute, could be really quite unprecedented on that southern flank as this system just closes by to the west of Scotland. again, as I said at the start of the video, if this system moved northwards like some runs were showing last week, then we probably see a little bit of blustery conditions. But if it's where it's positioned now, or even slightly closer to us, then we could, as I said, be looking at our first named storm of the season. Here, it just skirts the north of Scotland, and those exceptional winds move through into Saturday. Now, if you look at the mean sea level pressure, you can see the southeast northwest split over the next few days into early October, not really moving anywhere, and that contributes to all that rain. And then you can see the first low moves through there, 9-8, 6 towards its centre into Thursday, and then into Friday the next system approaches, and my gosh, that is low. Look at that, 930 millibars towards the centre of that low. That's why I'm 90% sure the UKV is overdoing it, because that is, again, unprecedented levels. That will be one of the strongest storms I've ever seen, and perhaps, again, I don't know the exact records, one of the strongest storms we've ever seen in the UK. And you can see as it just skirts the north of Scotland on that southern flank where the winds could be ridiculous. And if we do put on those winds, you can see it's gusty during Thursday. You look at this and think could be yellow warnings issued for this system as it moves through. But it's nothing compared to what arrives during Friday evening. 60, 70 during the afternoon, 80 or even 90 into the evening. And then look at that southern flank, in excess of 100 miles per hour, quite widely on its southern flank, up towards 110, even 115, maybe isolated 120 mile per hour gusts there. Again, we would be looking at some ridiculous wind speeds there as that clears through. Widespread amber warnings, probably red warnings, and this would be undoubtedly named if this did occur. That is quite a ridiculous system if that did occur. And the thing that I want to look at is the mean winds. As this clears through, you're seeing mean winds into Friday of in excess of 70, maybe even 80 miles per hour. That is towards Category 1 hurricane status. Those are the sort of wind speeds we're looking at here. Again, we never normally compare ourselves to a hurricane. Sometimes in terms of gusts, we can say, 120 mile per hour gusts. That's like a sustained wind in a Cat 2, Cat 3. And that is true. In this scenario, not only are we seeing those sort of gusts, we're actually seeing sustained winds here of 70 plus miles per hour, which is in and around that Cat 1 level. So, ridiculous system, and that's why I'm 90% sure the UKV is slightly overdoing it today. But again, we'll wait and see. We'll have to see what it shows in the next 24 to 48 hours. That will really decide the fate of this system. Could come to absolutely nothing. Could be just another standard low, yellow warnings issued, or we could be looking at a pretty unprecedented system. Now, do you look at the temperatures as we head into Tuesday? It's a chilly morning, perhaps not quite as cold as this morning, but still chilly, around the mid to high teens there into Tuesday afternoon. Into Wednesday, a little bit chilly, but with more cloud around, we'll hold those temperatures up. And again, with some of that rain and cloud moving in, temperatures more towards the low teens or low double digits there in the north, maybe 18 or 19 in the south to start October. Thursday, 20 degrees is possible across the East Midlands, not too bad. But as we head into Friday, we start to see those westerly winds pushing in, much, much cooler under all of that rain. And then that next system arrives, that storm system, into the weekend. Then it turns pretty chilly indeed. High single digits at the best across parts of northern England and Scotland. And then as we head up towards eastern parts, southeastern parts, maybe only 16 or 17. Now, if you look at the latest GFS, you can see over the next few days, those westerly winds start to pick up. That system, look at that as it arrives into Saturday. Again, that is really quite telling because that is very similar to the UKV. Now, it's not exactly the same UKV, slightly further westwards, a bit more developed. This gets down to about 948 millibars, so still an exceptionally deep area of low pressure. And again, if we look at the max wind speeds, wind gusts here, we're looking at 120, 130 kilometers per hour, so 70, 80, maybe even 90 miles per hour. So that is still ridiculously strong, but it is a level below what the UKV was showing. This is more of a realistic scenario. Again, skeptical of its exact track, as this takes it further southwards. But this is a more realistic scenario as this clears through, where, we are looking at very strong winds, but nothing, that is completely unheard of for the UK. 70, 80 miles per hour. It's very strong, but we normally see it once, twice a year, or maybe a little bit more often than that in a very stormy season. So it's not something ridiculous, but it is still very dangerous, probably would be named, and probably would see multiple warnings issued for this. Now it does clear eastwards, clears away, and then we see high pressure for a time through next week, through the start of next week. Low pressure does return. We do see some lower pressure, but eventually by the end of the run, we see high pressure pushing back in. So what we start to see developing is a bit of a chopping and changing pattern. As I said, very stormy conditions later on this week, but very quickly it dies down and it doesn't look actually too bad there towards the middle of the month. So very changeable conditions as we do progress on this latest GFS run. Now the GM, it's very similar. That low approaches towards the weekend, spins up, and again is on a very similar track to the UKV, just off the west coast of Scotland. Pretty similar levels to the GFS there, down towards about 948, maybe 946 millibars. So again, very deep area of low pressure, but not on the scale of the UKV. And again, if we look at the wind gusts, we're looking at 130, 140 kilometers per hour. Again, that is 80, maybe 90, maybe 95 miles per hour. So still ridiculously strong winds, dangerous, but not quite on the scale of the UKV. Now that clears through, and similar to the GFS, high pressure ridges in for a time, and we do see a bit of low pressure, but by day 10, high pressure is sat out in the Atlantic, blocking the jet stream. So it's not like it's a massive change, and we're going to see Atlantic onslaught there in early October. It really is 48, 72 hours of very stormy, exceptionally stormy conditions, and it ends. Now, finally, if we look at the latest ECMWF, that storm system sweeps through there on Friday. Unfortunately, it's only got 24-hour intervals, so we can't look at it in too much detail, but it does look a similar track and similar level of intensity to the other two runs. And then eventually, longer term, it actually is pretty unsettled. High pressure not blocking the Atlantic as much, so more of a westerly flow, but high pressure still influential, so still likely to be some drier and milder days. Now, do finish by looking at the ensembles. You can really see the change that's appeared in the last 24 hours as a lot of the runs now are cottoning on to this low pressure system. It's not that it wasn't within the model output over the past few days. We just weren't sure where it was going to sit. But a lot of the runs now are agreeing both on its track and its intensity. As you see, all of the 4 runs we've looked at today, including the high resolution UKV, has it very close by to the UK, and all 4 have it down towards 950 or below. But you can see quite a distinct line now appearing, dip there within the upper air temperatures, and a spike in precipitation as that system moves in. And remember, we're looking at London here. We are in London, the furthest away from this system, and it's really not going to be too impactful on at least its current track. Yes, blustery, yes, pretty unsettled, but probably wouldn't be anything too remarkable. You can see those rebound after, so we're pretty confident that it's going to go a little bit more moderate there beyond that and be a little bit all over the place, but nothing too extreme. Sea level pressure really dipping as well, and it's looking pretty deep there for London, even around 970, 980 millibars. So some even have the track of this system further southwards, which is pretty remarkable. Wind speeds are also spiking, again indicating that system is within most of the output. And if we do just have a look at Glasgow, for example, go up towards Scotland, you can see some big spikes appearing. And if we look at the mean sea level pressure, a lot of runs are down towards the 950, 960, 970 millibars. And again, still Glasgow looks quite far from the centre of the system as it's going to clear western and northern Scotland. So pretty remarkable to shift within the ensemble. As I said, it's not because this wasn't within the model output, it was just so unsure of the past week or so. Of course, we didn't note this late last week, but it's, pretty remarkable how quickly the runs have sort of cottoned onto an idea today. And they're now pretty much all in agreement that we are going to see this pretty severe system move through. Now it's just pinpointing the exact track and the exact intensity. I really hope it's not the intensity of the UKV. We could be seeing some quite major damage later on this week. And if finally we compare to the ECMWF, this is the midnight run. Again, you can see the runs starting to agree on that system, dip in the upper air temperatures and spike in precipitation before flatlining a little bit beyond that, and sea level pressure dipping as well as we head towards the latter portion of this week. So real intrigue coming for later on this week. Suspect there'll be multiple more warnings, and if we do go by the looks of the latest runs, the system probably will be named and we'll probably see amber warnings issued. And if something like the UKV occurred, then red warnings would likely be issued as well, as that would be one of the most severe systems, as I said, I've ever seen. So we'll wait and see what happens over the coming days. We'll keep you updated. The only positive we can take is it's kind of a one and done. It's not a back-to-back pattern. It's not going to be there for a couple of weeks. We can see these stormy spells for a while during some of the autumnal winter spells. This looks like it's going to be 24 to 72 hours of stormy conditions, and then we're back to something a bit more moderate. So anyway, thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you again for another video soon.